Welcome back, friends. You're just in time for another watercolor tutorial, and today we are all about the wintry watercolor botanicals as we paint cedar, spruce, holly, and more. Hi friends, welcome back. My name is Shayda, and we're gonna have a really fun time painting in watercolor today. I want to mention that our tutorial is sponsored by the lovely Genuine Crafts, and I have their 48 pan watercolor set. It's the one you're gonna see me use in this video. Just a tip, if you've purchased this, it's a great idea to do a color chart. As you can see, there's a lot of colors, 9 greens. We're gonna be using a lot of green today, so this is always a good idea, and I've done a little one that just fits right in the palette, so I always have it when I'm painting. The set of paints also comes with 2 water brushes, and these are just great if you're painting outdoors. It's really clean and portable and not messy at all. But today I'll probably be using my paint brushes for my winter watercolor because I just love paintbrushes. All right, so let's take a look. What I've done here is this is actually my practice painting, and I just cut out all of my practice work, and they look so cute. So today we're going to paint cedar, spruce, holly, snowberries, pine, and some other little berry. And I just think they look so sweet. These would make great holiday gift tags if you love botanicals like I do. So let's get started. I'm going to grab a brush and we'll talk about supplies. Of course, we're using our 48 pan watercolor set from Genuine Crafts. It comes with the palette and the water brushes. I've got some paper towel, 2 glasses of clean water, and then I'll use my pointed round brushes. I have a synthetic Winsor & Newton and a sable hair. I'll link both of those in the description. A pointed round brush is my go-to for watercolor because it has a nice fine point for detail but holds lots of paint. I've also got cold pressed 140 pound watercolor paper. And I suppose we'll start removing these guys, and I'm going to start my painting today with cedar. If you have this Genuine Crafts set at home or you're ordering it and you would like to paint along with me, I'm going to show you how I'm mixing the colors. So for this one, I'm using these these 3 greens here that are right in the center, and I like mixing the 3 of them together. They're all sort of cool minty greens, and then I like to mix in a little bit of purple and blue as well, and that gives me this nice rich dark minty green that's perfect for a lot of different evergreens. I'm also mixing a lighter warmer green. This is just a medium green mixed with a bit of red to mute it slightly. It just dulls that green by adding a touch of red. So let's start with our cedar. I'm using the tip of my round brush and making the stem or marking the stem, and then I do this sort of stippling action where I release a bit of paint through the tip and I add a little more pressure and press that brush against the page. I sort of move quickly and randomly to get this spotting, and the paint just flows really nicely through the brush, and you get this messy, splotchy color that looks so beautiful. I always think cedar looks a little bit like lace. It's such a delicate evergreen, and that's what we're going for here. I add a little water to my paint to make it slightly more translucent in some areas so that I get a bit of contrast as far as the color is concerned. And you can release a little more paint into the wet area. It will seep out in a really nice natural way, and that's the cedar. Next, I'm mixing up a very blue-green. We're going to do blue spruce, and again, I've used those 3 greens that are right in the middle, and then I'm mixing in even more blue and purple and a little bit of gray, and there's 2 grays on this palette. Either one will be fine. You can see my practice work. It's quite a minty blue color, so that's what I want to achieve again. And I'm going to use my pointed round brush, the animal hair. We'll link that in the description if you're looking for it. Same with the paints. And I've started again with a stem, and I'm using the very tip of that brush to add those little needles on both sides of the stem. They're just quick, thin brush strokes. Let's do another branch. And again, we do all these little needles sort of angling away from the original stem or the middle stem. We'll do another branch here on the other side, very thin, delicate lines, but I also do them very quickly because there's just something about painting things that are really thin and a subject matter as sort of imperfect as a tree or a branch. There's something about moving quickly that just feels right when I'm doing these tiny little brush strokes. So you can see me filling this in here. You can do as many little branches as you like to fill in the space. And that's our blue spruce. Okay, now we're going to do snowberries. So they are white. So to paint a white item, we're going to need a little bit of gray. And what I do is I mix the lightest gray. There's two grays, as I said. I mix the lighter one with just a little bit of pink or red. And I don't know, I just like mixing in a little red into my grays to kind of warm it up and soften it slightly. So these are our snowberries. We're going to do these white clusters of berries with these funny little green leaves. So now that I've got my gray, the berries are where I'll start. So what you want to do when you're painting something white is you need to capture a bit of the shadow of that white thing in order to paint a white subject on a white page. So what I'm doing here is kind of just painting a little oval for each berry, but I'm adding a very light gray shadow to one side of each oval. And I'll layer the paint in order to kind of make these berries stand out. So right now I just want the lightest gray. So start light. You can always build color later. You don't want to start with a dark gray that's too heavy. And while I'm waiting for that first layer of gray to dry, I'm taking just a nice warm brown and I am joining the berries with some delicate branches. And I've kind of got these little branches going off every which way. And then I'll take that warmer green. I mixed in a bit of a darker green there as well to darken it slightly. And I'm just using the brush to make these funny little oval shaped leaves. So I drag the belly of the brush across the page to give me a nice splotch of color there. I drag it and then I use the tip to refine the shape of the leaf. So drag it across the page and then use the tip of the brush to develop the shape. Add a little point if you want to those oval shapes. I'm going to flip the page around just because I find painting leaves, it's much easier to pull the brush towards me. And so of course moving the page around just allows me the best angle. And I want to add a bunch of leaves sort of all over. Also drawing or painting these darker leaves will help to create contrast and it will help to kind of make those very white berries stand out. So speaking of the berries, now that they've dried, I'm coming back with a slightly darker gray. It's still very light, still very watery paint. And I'm going to add just a little more definition to really make them pop and stand out. I had a little too much paint on my brush there, so you just want to use a really light hand still. You could almost be dry brushing. You could have a very dry brush with just a hint of gray on it. And we're going to add a bit more shadow and a bit of a border to our white berries. I mean, these paintings are very whimsical, so don't overthink it, but just keep the gray light. Moving on, our next painting is holly. So I'll get this little guy out of the way. These would make such pretty gift tags for Christmas gifts. I'm starting with a minty green, pretty much the same one I used for the cedar, but very watery. And I just do an oval shape. And then I use the brush to kind of mess that oval up because the holly has these crazy sort of scalloped edged leaves. So I just want to create a very free shape. Now you could also do it by simply doing brush strokes, sort of start at one point and push your brush out to give you the funny sides of those leaves. And then because we used a nice light watery paint, you can release a little bit of darker pigment into that wet area, a nice minty green or even a bit of navy blue. With my leaves done, I want to mix up a rich red, so I'm mixing red and purple together to give me this deep burgundy color, but still very cherry red at the same time. You'll see on the page here, I'm going to do a cluster of berries, and I do that by doing these little circles, but I push them all up against each other. So there's some little bit of negative space in there so that you can see its individual berries. I allowed the red paint to sit right up against the green leaves, and a little bleeding. I maybe got a bit more than I bargained for, but I let that dry, and I don't mind a bit of that red in the leaves. I think that looks pretty, but it was a bit much. The paint got away from me a little, so I'm going to do a bit of wet on dry, which I had planned to do, but maybe just not quite as much. And I'm taking this very dark green and just adding a bit of a messy brush stroke to these leaves to give them a little something extra. And while I'm doing that, I thought I could add just a touch of dark green to my snowberry leaves as well. As each bit dries, you can go back and add that extra detail if you like. And next we're going to do this cute little berry. So I am using a very rich dark purple to paint these tiny little oval or teardrop shapes. And you can see I just sort of run the brush across the page once or twice, add just a little bit of pressure, and I don't worry if they're all a bit different. Now to get that color, I'm using this bright purple, mix it with lots of water, and then I'm grabbing a bit of the very warm purple that sits below it, so I'll mix that in. It's got a lot more red, and then this brown, and when those three colors come together, it gives me this really rich, beautiful hue. Mixing brown into your purples is always a good idea if you want to darken them. And I'm painting 3 clusters of these little berries. And once I've got my clusters done, I'm going to grab that brown that we used to mix with the purple, and I'll take just the brown on the tip of my pointed round brush, and I'm going to join all these berries with some very delicate little stems or branches. I want to take just a second to say thank you to Genuine Crafts again for sponsoring today's video. If you haven't heard, Genuine Crafts now has their Gen Crafts Club, and members get access to exclusive deals, promotions, giveaways, tutorials, and contests with prizes. And there's lots of chances to have your art featured on their social media pages. If you'd like to receive 15% off the products being used in this video, click the link below. That link will take you directly to Facebook Messenger. Sign up there to receive the deal. Okay, last one. We're going to paint this pine with a little pine cone as well. This is a lot of fun to paint. It's like the spruce, those quick, thin motions of the brush. So I have a dark green, and what I've done here is I've mixed these 2 greens in the middle. I find they give a really natural shade when you mix them, and then I've mixed purple in as well to darken it. And I think I added a touch of gray, but that's how I got there. I want a nice sophisticated dark green, and again I'll take my pointed round brush and use just the tip, and I'll paint the branch or the stem in the middle. So I'll mark where this is going to sit on the page by painting center first, and then I start doing these quick, thin, delicate brush strokes, and I'm just going out from center on both sides, and I'm painting these little needles. Now the key is to make sure they all don't go in the same angle. You don't want every needle angled in the same direction. They should look a little wonky, and you want to have them sort of going every which way. And I'm going to paint a second branch here, crossing over the first, and just using the same technique with these fast, thin brush strokes, using just the very tip of that round brush to give me these really nice delicate strokes. And I want some of them to blend and bleed together so that it does have that beautiful watercolor look. So I don't want every little needle to be separate. I'm adding even a bit of water so that they do blend and bleed a little bit, and then I might put a little darker paint into that wet area, and that just gives me that really perfectly imperfect look. And then I'm taking a light yellowy brown and just painting a little oval, a bit of a lumpy little oval, very light paint. And I'll let that dry. And then once it has dried, I took a darker brown, just slightly darker, and I'm doing this funny little pine cone sort of, just painted some scalloped lines there to kind of give the hint of a pine cone. I'll also come back in with a darker brown and add just a bit of detail to my berries and leaves over here, and that's totally optional. And same idea, doing the wet on dry. I can add a bit of a darker blue to my blue spruce or anything else that might need it. But that is it. Those were so fun to paint. We did cedar, spruce, holly, and more. And my winter watercolors are complete. I'm definitely going to paint more of these for gift tags and Christmas cards. And speaking of Christmas cards, you can expect a holiday card tutorial later this November. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out Genuine Crafts. All the Amazon links are in the video description. And I will see you soon with a new video.